Okay. All right. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand what this is all about. What we're doing here in the next this week and the next 5 weeks after that, is not a lesson in witnessing. Okay? Although God commands us to be a witness for Him, as we see here in Matthew. Okay? Peter writes, we need to be ready to defend the faith. But that's not what this is about. It is about that. I mean, everybody, all of us should be witnesses. But I'm not going to stand here and tell you how to be a good witness. That's a great subject for another day. But I will tell you my experience was, I grew up in church as a kid. And when I became a young man, I became deacon in a Southern Baptist church. Several of them. It's about 3 different Baptist churches that I belonged to at different times. And part of that job as a deacon in that Baptist church was to go out and knock on doors. They may give you a name of somebody in the community that's not saved, and you went out and witnessed to them. I was petrified. And some of y'all can relate to that, I'm sure. I did it. I don't know whether I did it very well or not. And what has happened in the last 15 years, I have been immersed myself in the subject matter of the origin of the universe, the origin of life, evolution versus creation. I've read about 90, lost count, 90 to 100 books on the subject. I've made, like I said, presentations to church groups, at the villages and so forth, but I have been called, I have no choice but to learn this and to share it. That's just what God has called me to do. In the philosophy club, at the end of my presentation, the guy said, let me ask you a couple questions. He was the moderator. He said, why are you doing this? At that time, my presentation was not overtly Christian. It sure gave credence to a supreme being that created all things, but it also talked about all the other ones. And I stood there because I was trying to be a little bit stealthy, without just being so obvious about what my point was. And I said, I don't have any choice. And he said, what do you mean? I said, God told me I had to do this. So I knew that from the beginning. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I will continue doing as long as I can stand up. I guess I could do it from a wheelchair. Might do it too. So. All right. A review here. General revelation, how we learn about God, is through nature. It's given us a beautiful, wonderful place to learn. And the more we learn about nature, the more we know God, the Creator, exists and did that job. And this is not the heavens. This is everything that science studies. Okay, that's nature, the general revelation. Special revelation, scriptures. Why is there an apparent conflict between science and God? That's a very important question because it gets to the heart of why there's this divide. And believe me, if you don't think there is, you haven't read it or you haven't listened to it because there are books and books on it. There is a polarization in the scientific world today. The question should be, why are scientists and God in conflict? You understand, by definition, science cannot be in conflict with God. Okay? And we'll get to the definition of science and why that's not possible. First, the root word for science is scientia, which is Latin for knowledge, very simply. Okay? The definition of science, and there's a lot of definitions, but they all are very similar to this, because I've seen about 10 of them. The systematic study of the nature and behavior of the material and physical universe based on observation, experiment, and measurement, and the formulation of laws to describe these facts in general terms. So you basically have science has limited itself to the material and physical world. Scientists today says, I can't deal with anything that I can't measure, that I can't experiment with, and so forth. So they anything supernatural out of the equation. Okay, so if you're a believing Christian, The Bible is full of supernatural events. The one we talk about here, of course, is the creation of the universe, and does a heck of a job. All right, so you can see, while there is a apparent conflict, okay? The scientific method says a method of research in which a problem is identified, relevant data are gathered, a hypothesis is formulated from these data, and the hypothesis is empirically tested. Again, something is not true science unless it can be tested. And I'm not talking about, since empirically tested, I'm not talking about, oh, I've decided in my mind that God exists. But I haven't proven it. If you think you can prove God exists, you can prove it to yourself. And you might be able to prove it to some other people, but proof of God's existence is not, you can't do it scientifically, is what I'm saying. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So I actually understand how science cannot deal with the supernatural. Because how can you quantify it? Okay. In a purely material and physical universe, void of any supernatural events, what are we able to study? Okay? Matter, energy, space, time, and the laws of nature. That's what we can study in science. Okay? Everything else is not a scientific study. This is the position of scientists. I think it's a correct position. Now we talk about the laws of nature. There's some formulas up there and some ideas. E equals mc squared, that was the theory of that is the theory of relativity. It's been well proven scientifically by measurement, by experimentation. F equals gmm over r squared, that is the force of gravity attraction between two bodies in the universe. That's been tested. Okay? That's why I weigh 150 pounds. Let's see, I'm a freshman in high school weighing 150 pounds. I'm sorry. Okay. Thermodynamics. There are two laws of thermodynamics. One is the conservation of matter. It really means the conservation of matter and energy. Because matter and energy are really synonymous. Okay? One comes from the other. When you see that E equals mc squared, that's energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light. So in a small amount of matter, there's a huge amount of energy. Okay? And that's where all energy comes from. The four forces of nature: gravity, electromagnetism, nuclear strong force, and a nuclear weak force. We will not get into study those forces. I'm just telling you, these are the four forces of nature that have been discovered. And believe it or not, gravity is the weakest for those forces. Okay? And that's hard to understand because we feel gravity pretty strongly. I understand that. But if you're far away from another object, you feel no gravity for it. It's there. It's very, very small or negligible, but you feel very little pull. In other words, I feel a lot of pull toward my wife, but it isn't gravity. Okay.
What is it?
It's love. All right. How do we obtain knowledge? One way is by studying. By study. Now you obtain knowledge of the Bible by studying. When you go to school, you obtain knowledge through textbooks and what the teachers tell you. See that word caution? I put that there for a reason. When it comes to the subject matter of evolution and creation, or the subject matter of the cosmos and how the origin of the universe came about, or the origin of life, you can read a book, and if you don't have what I would call critical thinking skills, or you don't have a filter that you filter all this information through, okay, like your filter is Christianity, you have understanding of what that is, and what's true and not true. You may have a scientific filter if you're a scientist or you know a lot of technical stuff. See the stack of books here? This is not all of them. I'm going to read you what they are. Stephen Hawking, The Grand Design. The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin. By the way, did you know what the subtitle of that book is that never shows up anymore?
Theory.
Huh?
Is that the theory of?
No, it's not, that's not what it says. It says the subtitle is, and I'm gonna butcher it, but it says, how superior races will always survive and inferior races will not. It was a very racist, he had a very racist viewpoint, but you don't see that anymore. Richard Dawkins, Unweaving the Rainbow. I'm going to tell you something about all these books, because I've read all of them. Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. This is a whopper here. A Universe from Nothing, Lawrence Krauss. He believes the universe came from nothing, by the way. It's also something, why is there something rather than nothing? This is what I'm reading now, I'm almost finished with, it's called The Big Picture, Sean Carroll. Again, Richard Dawkins, very prolific writer. The Greatest Show on Earth. He's talking about Christianity, by the way. The Descent of Man, Charles Darwin. Okay. These books